In the sterile conference rooms of Yuan Industries, a systems engineer was about to challenge the most powerful woman in tech. What started as a routine quarterly review took a shocking turn when he came face to face with his own rebirth. Zhao wasn't your typical corporate drone. For one devastating year, he had lived through betrayal and divorce, known for being invisible and overlooked. When he encountered Isabella Yuan's piercing stare and direct challenge, he had no idea he was walking into his destiny. Ethan made a choice to speak truth to power that would lead to everything he thought he wanted crumbling away. What began as a failed marriage would become a corporate empire. The business world would never be the same after the Ice Queen found her equal. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I woke up to the sound of rain against glass and the familiar weight of dread in my chest. For a moment, everything felt normal, the gray light filtering through our bedroom curtains, Leah's silhouette at the vanity, the distant hum of morning traffic. Then I saw the date on my phone. March 15th, 2034. Exactly 1 year before she destroyed everything. My heart hammered against my ribs as I stared at the screen. This had to be some kind of mistake, a dream, a breakdown. But the details were too sharp, too real. The coffee stain on the nightstand that wouldn't come out. The loose floorboard by the closet. Even the way Leah hummed that off-key melody while applying her lipstick, the same melody that would haunt me for months after she left. Morning, sleepyhead. She didn't turn around, just caught my reflection in her mirror. You look terrible. Late night coding again? In my first life, I would have gotten up, kissed her cheek, asked about her day. I would have made coffee, packed her lunch, worried about whether she seemed distant. This time I stayed in bed and watched her, really watched her. The way she angled her phone away from me when it buzzed. The deliberate casualness of her voice when she said, "Working late again tonight. Big presentation tomorrow." The practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes when she finally turned to face me. "Ethan, you're staring." "Just admiring my wife," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. She laughed, but it had an edge. "Since when do you do morning sweet talk?" "Since I learned what losing you actually meant," I thought. "Since I spent 11 months drowning in rage and self-pity. Since I realized that some gifts come disguised as curses." "I'll try to be home early," she said, already moving toward the door. "Maybe we can order in." Talk, right? The same conversation we'd had a year from now, where she'd tell me about Julian, about how sorry she was, about how it just happened. Where I'd beg her to choose me, to give us another chance, to remember what we used to have. This time I just nodded. "Sure, sounds good." She paused at the doorway, studying me with those dark eyes that used to make me forget everything else. "Are you feeling okay? You seem different." "I'm fine, Leah. Just tired." After she left, I sat in the silence of our apartment, soon to be just my apartment. I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Not anger, not heartbreak. Peace. The office buzzed with its usual chaos, but today felt electric. Our parent company was sending someone down for quarterly reviews. Lucas Jin, our perpetually optimistic team lead, bounced between cubicles like a caffeinated golden retriever. "Big boss is coming. Big boss is coming," he announced to anyone who'd listen. From Yuan Industries, supposedly she never leaves her ivory tower. I looked up from my code. Isabella Yuan, the Ice Queen herself. They say she bought out 3 competitors last month without blinking. Also that she's never been photographed smiling. Isabella Yuan, in my first life. I'd only heard whispers about Hertha, mysterious billionaire who owned half the tech sector but lived like a ghost. I'd never met her, never even been in the same building when she visited. But today I was going to change that. The elevator chimed at exactly 10 a.m., and the office went dead quiet. She stepped out like she owned the air itself, which technically she probably did. Tall, elegant, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her expression gave away absolutely nothing. "Miss Yuan." Our division manager, Peterson, scurried forward like a nervous waiter. Welcome to Where's the Quarterly Efficiency Report? Her voice cut through his pleasantries like a blade through silk. Right here, ma'am. Though I should mention we're slightly behind projections due to, I can read, Peterson. She took the tablet, scanned it for maybe 30 seconds, then looked up. Her gaze swept across the office and landed on me. I should have looked away, gone back to my screen, pretended to be busy like everyone else. Instead, I met her stare directly. You. She walked over to my desk, heels clicking against the tile. Ethan Zhao, systems engineer, 3 years with the company. She said it like she was reading from a file. Your productivity metrics are 20% above average, but you've never applied for promotion. Promotions require ambition, I said. I'm more interested in solutions. Lucas made a strangled sound from his cubicle. Peterson looked like he might faint, but Isabella Yuan tilted her head slightly, the first crack in her perfect composure. Solutions to what? This. I gestured at the chaos around us. Half these processes are redundant. The other half are actively working against each other. We're using legacy systems held together with digital duct tape and corporate politics. And you have a better way? A year ago, I would have stammered, apologized, backed down. Today, I shrugged. I have several better ways. The question is whether anyone wants to hear them. She was quiet for a long moment, studying me like I was a puzzle she couldn't quite solve around us. The office held its collective breath. Conference room B, 5 minutes? She turned to Peterson, alone. As she walked away, Lucas practically fell out of his chair. Dude, he whispered, did you just sass the Ice Queen? Are you insane? Maybe I was. But for the first time in a year, I felt awake. The conference room felt like a glass cage. All clean lines and intimidating emptiness. Isabella sat across from me, fingers steepled, watching me with the intensity of a chess master planning 10 moves ahead. Your efficiency suggestions, she said, not bothering with small talk. Walk me through them. For the next hour, I laid out everything I'd been thinking for years, but never had the courage to voice. Streamlined workflows, integrated platforms, automated redundancies. She listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on her tablet. Implementation cost 6 months. Moderate budget. Most of it's reorganization, not new purchases. Resistance from management. Hi, nobody likes admitting their system is broken, including Peterson, especially Peterson. Something that might have been amusement flickered across her face. You don't seem concerned about job security. Should I be? Most people would be terrified right now. I leaned back in my chair. Most people haven't had their life fall apart and discovered it was actually a favor. That got her attention. She set down her tablet and really looked at me. Personal philosophy or recent experience? Both? The silence stretched between us, but it wasn't uncomfortable, more like mutual recognition. Two people who'd learned that caring too much was often the first step toward losing everything. I want a full proposal by Friday, she said finally. Detailed timeline, resource allocation, risk assessment. Can you deliver? Can you handle Peterson when he realizes you're circumventing his authority? This time, she definitely smiled. It was small, barely there, but real. Mr. Zhao, I've been handling men like Peterson since I was 25. I think I can manage. After she left, I sat in the empty conference room and felt something shift inside my chest. That love? I wasn't that naive, but recognition, respect. The first genuine professional conversation I'd had in years. My phone buzzed. Text from Leah, running even later tonight. Don't wait up. A year ago, that message would have eaten me alive. Tonight, I deleted it without responding. You look different, Clara said, sliding into the booth across from me at our old coffee shop. We'd been meeting here every Thursday for 6 years, until my marriage started consuming all my time and energy. Less defeated. Thanks, I think. It's a compliment. You've been walking around like a ghost for months. What changed? I couldn't exactly tell her I'd been given a cosmic do-over. Work stuff. New project. Must be some project. She studied my face with the sharp attention that made her such a good consultant. Or maybe it's the new boss everyone's talking. About the Ice Queen? You heard about that? Lucas has been live tweeting your entire office drama. According to him, you're either getting promoted or fired, and Isabella Yuan might secretly be a robot. I laughed, surprising myself. It was the last time I'd actually laughed? Lucas watches too many movies. Maybe, but he's not wrong about you being different. More present. She leaned forward. Ethan, what's really going on? And don't say nothing. I've known you too long. For a moment, I considered telling her everything. About the time loop, about Leah's affair, about the year of hell I'd already lived through. But how do you explain temporal mechanics to someone who thinks your biggest problem is working too much? I'm just tired of being invisible, I said instead. Tired of letting other people make all the choices. About time. She raised her coffee cup in a mock toast. Ethan Zhao, finally showing up to his own life. Don't get carried away. I'm still figuring out what that means. We'll figure it out fast. Because whatever you're doing, it's working. You look like yourself again. Myself. The irony was that I'd never felt less like my old self and more like someone entirely new. Someone who could look Isabella Yuan in the eye without flinching. Someone who could delete Leah's texts without spiraling. Someone who is finally learning the difference between being alone and being lonely. I came home to find Julian's jacket on my couch. In my first life, this was the moment everything started unraveling. I'd confronted Leah, demanded explanations, made threats I couldn't follow through on. She'd cried, apologized, promised it was nothing serious. I'd believed her because I wanted to, because the alternative was admitting my marriage was already over. This time, I hung up the jacket carefully in the closet and started making dinner. They came down the stairs 20 minutes later, all awkward energy and forced casualness. Julian looked exactly like I remembered, handsome and that effortless. Way that came from good genes and better money, charming smile, expensive watch. He'd lost his trust fund and some bad investments, but he still carried himself like royalty. Ethan, Leah's voice pitched higher than usual. Oh. Julian stopped by. To discuss some work stuff? You remember Julian, right? From college? Of course. I turned from the stove, offered him my hand. Good to see you again. His handshake lingered a moment too long, testing for weakness. In my first life, I'd failed that test spectacularly. Now I just smiled and squeezed back, noting the slight surprise in his eyes when I didn't immediately look away. Leah's told me so much about your work, he said. Systems engineering, right? Must be fascinating. It has its moments. I turned back to the pan. Staying for dinner? Oh, no, I couldn't. He can't stay, Leah interrupted quickly. He has plans. Another time then? Turn around, but I could feel the weight of their stares. Leah, dinner's ready in 5 minutes. I heard whispered conversation, the front door opening and closing, footsteps on the stairs. When Leah reappeared, she looked like someone trying very hard to appear normal. Sorry about that. Julian's going through a rough patch. Divorce stuff. Ah, I plated the pasta, set her portion across from mine. Must be difficult. He's really struggling. I'm just trying to be a good friend. A good friend. Right? In 3 months, she'd be choosing that good friend over her husband. But tonight, I just nodded and passed her the wine. You're being very understanding, she said, watching me carefully. Should I not be? No, it's just, you're usually more. She searched for words. It's more intense about things. Intense. That was one way to put it. Jealous, paranoid, suffocating. Those were some others. It's all accurate in their way. The old Ethan had been a lot of things, but secure wasn't one of them. Maybe I'm learning to pick my battles, I said. She smiled, but there was something uncertain in her eyes. Like she was looking at a stranger wearing her husband's face, which, in a way, she was. The proposal took me 3 days to write and contained the most honest assessment of our company's failures I'd ever put on paper. Most executives would have buried it in corporate speak and diplomatic suggestions. Instead, I called incompetence by its name and backed every criticism with data. Isabella read it in silence while I sat across from her in the executive conference room, watching rain streak down floor-to-ceiling windows. The city looked different from this height, smaller, more manageable. like problems that seemed enormous from ground level revealed themselves as minor inconveniences when viewed from above. "This is thorough," she said finally. "It's honest. Same thing, in this case." She set the document aside and studied me. "You realize implementing these changes would essentially gut Peterson's department? His department is already gutted? I'm just suggesting we acknowledge reality. And you'd be comfortable taking his position?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. A year ago, I would have deflected, insisted I wasn't ambitious enough for management, talked about being a team player. Spent 11 months watching ambition pass him by. "I'd be comfortable fixing problems," I said. "If that comes with a title, fine. If it doesn't, also fine. Most people would kill for the opportunity you're describing. Most people haven't learned the difference between wanting something and needing it." She leaned back in her chair, something shifting in her expression. "You keep saying things like that, about learning, about experience. What happened to you, Ethan?" The question caught me off guard, not because it was personal, I'd expected that, but because of the way she asked it, like she actually wanted to know, not just making conversation. "I lost something I thought was everything," I said. "Turned out it was just everything I thought I wanted, and now I want different things, such as..." I looked out at the city, at all those people fighting battles they didn't need to fight, chasing dreams that would only disappoint them. Respect, peace, work that matters. Someone who sees me as an ally, not a project. "Specific," she said. "Most people would say money, success, happiness. Happiness is overrated. Contentment lasts longer." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then Isabella did something I hadn't expected. She laughed. Not the polite corporate chuckle I'd heard her use with Peterson, but something genuine. "You're either the most evolved person I've ever met," she said, "or you're completely dead inside. Why not both?" "Because dead people don't write proposals like this. Dead people don't look me in the eye when I'm interrogating them. Dead. People definitely don't make jokes during job interviews. Is that what this is? What do you think it is?" I considered the question seriously. Executive conference room, the personal questions, the way she'd been watching me like I was a puzzle worth solving. A test of what? Whether I'm worth the risk. And am I worth the risk to you? The question surprised me. Isabella Yuan, asking if she was worth anything to anyone, like she genuinely wasn't sure. Depends what you're offering. A chance to rebuild something broken? Partnership, not hierarchy. Mutual respect instead of corporate politics. She paused. Also probably more enemies than you're prepared for. You can handle enemies? Can you handle success? Can you handle someone who doesn't need you? That stopped her. For the first time since I'd met her, Isabella Yuan looked genuinely uncertain, like I'd asked a question she'd never considered. "I don't know," she said finally. "I've never tried it." "Then maybe we're both taking a risk." She stood and walked to the windows, looking out at the city with the expression of someone who owned half of it, but wasn't sure why that mattered. "I'll be honest with you, Ethan. I don't do partnerships. I don't do trust. I don't do anything that requires me to depend on someone else's competence or loyalty." Now why are we having this conversation? You're the first person in 5 years who's talked to me like I'm human instead of a bank account with opinions. She turned back to face me. "And because your proposal is either brilliant or completely insane, and I can't decide which, could be both. That's what worries me." I stood as well, moving to join her at the window. We stood side by side, not quite touching, looking out at a world that suddenly felt full of possibilities instead of limitations. "For what it's worth," I said, "I don't need you to trust me. I just need you to let me prove I'm worth trusting. And if you're not, then you fire me and find someone else. But if I am, if you are..." I turned to look at her, this woman who'd built an empire, but locked herself away from everyone who might benefit from it. "If I am, then maybe we both get something we didn't know we were looking for." She was quiet for a long time, studying my reflection in the glass. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. "Peterson will fight this. The board will question it. Half the company will think I've lost my mind. And the other half? The other half will wonder what took me so long." She held out her hand and I took it. Her grip was firm, professional, But there was something else there, too. Relief. Maybe. Or hope. Welcome to the executive team, Ethan. Try not to make me regret this. As I walked back to my desk, Lucas practically tackled me in the hallway. Dude, he whispered frantically. What happened up there? Peterson looks like someone stole his lunch money, and half the executives are locked in emergency meetings. Just some restructuring, I said. Restructuring, that's it? Come on, give me something. The office betting pool has money riding on whether you're getting promoted or disappeared. What's the current spread? 60-40 in favor of promotion, but that was before Peterson started making angry phone calls. I laughed and patted his shoulder. Put me down for promoted, and Lucas. Yeah, preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. You might want to update your resume. Things are about to get interesting around here. The annual Tech Innovation Gala was the kind of event where million-dollar deals were made over champagne and gossip traveled faster than data packets. I adjusted my new Armani suit, a purchase that would have horrified the old me unchecked. My reflection in the hotel elevator's polished walls. Executive status came with certain expectations, and tonight I intended to meet all of them. Nervous? Isabella appeared beside me, stunning in a midnight blue gown that probably cost more than my old annual salary. She looked every inch the Ice Queen, except for the slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Should I be? Half the city's tech elite will be watching our every move tonight, wondering if the rumors are true. What rumors? I've finally found someone worthy of my attention. The Ice Queen has melted for her mysterious new executive. She glanced at me sideways. That we're sleeping together. I nearly choked on my water, are we? Not yet. The elevator. Doors opened with a soft chime. But they don't know that. The ballroom was a constellation of expensive dresses, tailored suits, and enough jewelry to fund a small country's GDP. Isabella and I moved through the crowd like we owned it, which, technically, she partially did. Conversations paused as we passed, eyes following our progress with barely concealed curiosity. There they are, Lucas's voice carried across 3 tables. He'd somehow managed an invitation and was live narrating the entire event to anyone within earshot. The power. A couple of the decade? Look at that synchronization. They even walk in rhythm. I caught Clara's eye from across the room. She raised her champagne glass in a subtle salute. Approval written across her face. It felt good to have allies in the room, Mr. Zhao. The voice made my blood freeze. I turned to find Leah approaching, radiant in emerald silk, Julian's arm possessively wrapped around her waist. What a surprise seeing you here, Leah. I kept my voice neutral, professional. Julian, enjoying the evening immensely. Julian's smile was all teeth and practiced charm. Though I have to say, I'm surprised to see you in such elevated circles. Things change, I said simply. Indeed they do. Leah's eyes flicked between Isabella and me, calculating. I don't believe we've been introduced. Leah Lin, VP of Strategic Development at Morrison Tech. Isabella Yuan. No warmth in the introduction, just polite ice. I believe I've heard your name before. The tension crackled between them like electricity. 2 powerful women sizing each other up while their respective partners watched. The chess match unfold. Your reputation precedes you, Ms. Yuan, Leah continued smoothly. Though I'm surprised to see you with Ethan. I didn't realize he was your type. My type. Ambitious, driven, successful. Each word was a calculated jab. Ethan's always been more of a behind-the-scenes kind of person. Isabella's smile could have frozen champagne. It's funny, I find ambition comes in many forms. Some people climb by stepping on others. Others lift everyone around them. I prefer the latter, direct hit. Leah's practiced composure cracked slightly, but she recovered quickly. How lovely. Though I hope you won't mind sharing stories about Ethan's, shall we say, more domestic qualities. Actually, I interrupted. I think our table is ready, if you'll excuse us. As we walked away, I felt Isabella's hand brush mine. That was your ex-wife. That was my ex-wife. She's exactly what I expected. Beautiful, successful, charming, threatened. Isabella paused by our table. She's realizing what she gave up. And how do you feel about that? Like I just won something I didn't know I was competing for. Dinner was a carefully orchestrated dance of corporate politics and social maneuvering. Isabella and I played our parts perfectly professional but intimate, powerful but approachable. The kind of partnership that made other people wish they were either of us. Speech. Speech. Someone called out during dessert, and the room picked up the chant. Isabella stood gracefully, commanding attention without effort. "Thank you all for a wonderful evening," she began, her voice carrying effortlessly across the ballroom. "It's nights like these that remind me why I love this industry. The innovation, the collaboration, the possibility of building something better than what came before." Her eyes found mine. "Speaking of building something better, I'd like to recognize someone who's revolutionized our company's efficiency. In just 3 weeks, Zhao, our new VP of Operations, has reminded me that sometimes the best partnerships are the ones you never see coming." The applause was thunderous. I stood, raising my glass, very aware of all the eyes on me. Isabella Yuan, who taught me that respect is earned, trust is precious, and the right partnership can change everything. To future ventures. To future ventures, the room echoed. As I sat down, I caught sight of Leah's table. Julian was red-faced drunk, gesticulating wildly at a clearly embarrassed investor. Leah looked mortified, trying to calm him down while maintaining her professional facade. $5 says he causes a scene before midnight, Lucas whispered from the next table over. "No bet," Clara replied. "That man is a disaster waiting to happen." She was right. 20 minutes later, Julian's voice rose above the ambient conversation. "You people have no idea what real success looks like. I've been running deals since before most of you knew what a stock option was." The investor he was, berating a silver-haired woman who'd built 3 fortunes. 500 companies looked at him like he was an interesting species of insect. How fascinating. "And what deals are you running now?" Julian's confident bluster deflated, between projects. "But when the right opportunity comes along, you'll be ready to step on whoever's in your way." The woman's voice carried across half the ballroom now. How refreshingly honest. Leah stood quickly, her face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Chen. Julian's had a long day. Spare me the excuses, dear. I've seen enough." Mrs. Chen turned to Isabella. "Ms. Yuan, your new VP shows excellent judgment in partners and in recognizing talent." As the evening wound down, Julian stumbled toward our table, clearly intent on some kind of confrontation. I stood to meet him, but Isabella's hand on my arm stopped me. "Let him come," she said quietly. "Some people need to destroy themselves publicly." "Ethan." Julian's voice slurred with alcohol and wounded pride. "My old friend. Quite the upgrade you've made. Though I wonder, does she know what kind of man you really are?" "What kind is that?" I asked calmly. "The kind who lets his wife slip away because he's too weak to fight for what's his." The room had gone quiet, all conversations pausing to watch the drama unfold. I could feel Leah's mortification from across the room, see the horrified faces of potential investors. "You're right," I said, surprising everyone, including myself. I was weak. I was so afraid of losing something that I forgot to ask if it was worth keeping. Julian blinked, clearly expecting a different response. "But I learned something from that experience," I continued. "I learned that fighting for the wrong thing is worse than losing. I learned that some things aren't worth fighting for at all." I glanced toward Leah. "I learned that letting go can be the strongest thing you do." Julian started forward, but Isabella stood smoothly, all 6 feet of her in heels. And suddenly he looked very small. "Mr. Feng," she said, her voice cutting through his alcohol-fueled bravado like a laser. "I think you've embarrassed yourself enough for one evening. Perhaps it's time to call it a night." Security appeared as if from nowhere, a subtle signal from Isabella that I hadn't even noticed. Julian found himself being escorted toward the exit, his protests growing fainter as the distance grew. Leah followed, shooting me one last look over her shoulder. It might have been regret. It might have been recognition. It was definitely goodbye, Lucas announced loudly into the returning quiet that was better than cable. The laughter that followed broke the tension, and conversations resumed. But I noticed the looks people gave me no respect, tinged with curiosity. The man who'd handled public humiliation with grace. It's the man who'd chosen dignity over drama. Impressive, Isabella murmured, as we walked toward the elevator. Most men would have punched him. Most men would have lost everything they'd built tonight. You've built something worth protecting? I looked at her brilliant, powerful, impossibly beautiful Isabella Yuan, who'd chosen me as her partner in whatever came next. I'm starting to think so. The morning after the gala brought consequences I hadn't anticipated. My phone started ringing at 6 a.m. and didn't stop. Apparently, the confrontation with Julian had been filmed by someone's date and uploaded to social media. By breakfast, #PowerCoupleGoals was trending, complete with commentary from business influencers and relationship experts who'd never met either of us. Have you seen this? Clara sent me links while I nursed coffee in my new corner office. Another perk of executive status. The videos were everywhere, each with a different spin. Some praised my restraint. Others analyzed the body language dynamics between Isabella and me. One particularly ambitious blogger had already written a 1,000-word piece about redefining masculinity in corporate culture. Fame suits you, Isabella said, appearing in my doorway with her own coffee and an amused expression. Well, I have to say, I didn't expect to become a relationship guru overnight. Any regrets about last night? None? She settled into the chair across from my desk. About the media circus? We'll see. My PR team is fielding interview requests from 3 major networks. Are we taking any? She raised an eyebrow. Presumptuous. Practical.
After?
Last night, we're a package deal, whether we like it or not. Before she could respond, my phone buzzed. Text from Leah. Can we talk, please? Isabella noticed my expression change. Your ex-wife wants to talk. Are you going to? I stared at the message, remembering all the times I'd begged for exactly this for Leah to reach out to want. To fix things. To choose us over whatever else was pulling her away. Now that it was here, I felt nothing but mild curiosity. Probably, closure is good for everyone. And if she wants more than closure, then she's going to be disappointed. I met Leah at the same coffee shop where Clara and I had our weekly meetings. Neutral territory, familiar but not intimate. She was already there when I arrived, looking smaller somehow in the afternoon light. Tired, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that comes from making all the wrong choices and finally realizing it. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. I wasn't sure you would. Why wouldn't I? Because of last night. Because of Julian. Because of... She gestured helplessly. Everything. Last night wasn't about you, Leah. It was about Julian making an ass of himself in public. It was about us. About what we had. What I threw away. Her voice cracked slightly. Ethan, I made a mistake. Huge, terrible mistake. Julian isn't. He's not what I thought he was. I know you know. I know he's broke. I know he's been using you to try to rebuild his reputation. I know he's desperate, and getting more so every day. I leaned back in my chair. What I don't know is why you're telling me this, because I want to fix it. Us. I want to come home. There it was. The words I'd fantasized about hearing for 11 months in my first life. The conversation I'd imagined having 1,000 different ways, where I was magnanimous or angry or heartbroken or triumphant. What I hadn't expected was to feel nothing.
Ow.
But there could be. We could start over. I know I hurt you. I know I was selfish and stupid. And you weren't stupid. You made a choice. You chose what you thought would make you happy. I was wrong. Maybe. But that doesn't mean coming back to me is right. She stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language.
I'll understand. You love me.
You've always loved me. I did love you. Past tense. But the man who loved you doesn't exist anymore. Because of her. It wasn't a question. Because of Isabella Yuan. Because of me, Isabella is. She's amazing. But this isn't about replacing you with someone else. This is about becoming someone who doesn't need replacing. Leah's composure finally cracked. Tears started falling, the kind of ugly crying that makeup can't survive. I don't know how to do this without you. Julian is. God, he's such a mess. And work is terrible, and I feel like I'm drowning. And you were always the one who made everything okay. I was the one who enabled you to never learn how to make things okay yourself. That's not fair, isn't it? Leah, name one major decision you've made in the last 5 years that you didn't either ask my opinion on or blame me for when it went wrong. The silence stretched between us. Around the coffee shop, other people's conversations filled the void. Normal people having normal problems. Not former spouses dissecting the wreckage of what they'd once thought was forever. I can't, she whispered finally. I know. And that's okay, but it's also why we can't go backward. So what am I supposed to do? Learn to swim. Find out who Leah Lin is when she's not somebody's wife or girlfriend or daughter. Figure out what you actually want instead of what you think you should want. I want you. No, you want the safety I represented. Security of having someone who would always choose you, even when you didn't choose them back. I reached across the table and took her hand the first time I'd touched her in months. You deserve better than that. You deserve to be with someone who challenges you, not someone who just supports you unconditionally. And you found that with her? I found that with myself. Isabella is just the bonus. Leah pulled her hand away, wiping her eyes with a napkin. You're different. Really different. It's like you became someone else overnight. Maybe I did. Maybe I had to. I miss you, the old you. I don't. That version of me was miserable and didn't even know it. She laughed, but it came out like a sob. I really fucked this up, didn't I? We both did. But that doesn't mean it was wrong. Sometimes you have to break something completely before you can build something better. Are you happy? Really happy? I considered the question seriously. I'm content. I respect myself. I wake up looking forward to the day instead of dreading it. I have work that matters and someone who sees me as an equal. I paused. Yeah, I think I'm happy. Good, that's good. She stood up, gathering her purse and coat. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For all of it. For not appreciating what we had while we had it. For what it's worth, I forgive you. I hope you find what you're looking for. What if what I'm looking for is a time machine? Then you're looking for the wrong thing. After she left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, watching the city move past the windows. My phone buzzed with the usual notifications work. Emails, social media mentions, a text from Clara asking how it went. But for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt completely still inside. Not empty, not numb, just complete. The chapter of my life that had included Leah Lin was officially closed. Julian Feng arrested for securities fraud. Isabella dropped the newspaper on my desk with evident satisfaction. Apparently the SEC has been investigating him for months. His little outburst at the gala was just the cherry on top. Federal charges, frozen assets, very unflattering mugshot where Julian looked nothing like the charming socialite who'd been parading around town. How did you know? I didn't. But I made some calls after the gala, when someone embarrasses me publicly. I like to know who I'm dealing with. She perched on the edge of my desk. Turns out Mr. Feng has been running a very creative Ponzi scheme, using his social connections to bilk investors out of millions. And Leah? Clean. As far as I can tell, stupid but not criminal. Isabella's expression softened slightly. I assume she'll be needing a new boyfriend. Not my problem anymore. Good, because we have bigger concerns. She pulled up a chair, switching into business mode. The quarterly board meeting is next week. There are going to be questions about our relationship, professional and otherwise. What kind of questions? The kind that come from old men who think women in power must be sleeping their way to every decision they make. Her voice carried an edge of steel. They'll want to know if I promoted you because of your qualifications or because you're warming my bed. And what are you going to tell them? The truth, that you've increased departmental efficiency by 30%, reduced operational costs by 15%, and managed to do it without a single layoff. She smiled. Also that my personal life is none of their goddamn business. That should go over well? Probably not. Which is why I have a proposition for you. I leaned back in my chair, studying her expression. Isabella Yuan with a proposition. Was either very good news or very bad news, with little middle ground. I'm listening. I want to accelerate your timeline. Full VP position, equity stake, seat on the executive committee. Everything we talked about, but compressed into 6 months instead of 2 years. What's the catch? The catch is that it will make us both targets. The old guard doesn't like change, and they especially don't like outsiders who threaten their comfortable incompetence. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city skyline. It also means our partnership becomes public knowledge, not the romantic speculation, the busyness reality. We sink or swim together, and if we sink, then we both go down with some very expensive ships. I joined her at the window, processing the magnitude of what she was offering. In my first life, I'd spent years clawing my way up the corporate ladder, fighting for scraps of recognition and modest promotions. Now Isabella was offering me a shortcut to the top with all the risks that entailed. Why? I asked. Why accelerate everything? Because I'm tired of playing it safe. Because the company needs shaken up, and you're the earthquake I've been waiting for. She turned to face me. And because I trust you in a way I haven't trusted anyone in a very long time. That's a lot of pressure. Can you handle it? I thought about the man I'd been a year ago, insecure, dependent, afraid of his own shadow. Then I thought about who I'd become, calm, confident, willing to walk away from anything that didn't serve him. I can handle it. The question is whether you can handle the backlash. Let me worry about the backlash. You focus on being brilliant. In that case, I accept. With one condition, which is, when this all goes sideways, and it will go sideways at some point, we handle it together. No throwing each other under the bus to save face. She extended her hand. Partners. We shook on it, and I felt the weight of possibility settle around us like expensive fabric. This was at the moment where I stopped reacting to my life and started actively creating it. The announcement went out at 5 p.m. on a Friday, ensuring maximum weekend gossip circulation. By Monday morning, the office was buzzing with theories, rumors, and wild speculation about my meteoric rise. Dude, Lucas cornered me at the coffee machine, practically vibrating with excitement. Vice president? With equity? Do you know what? This means that I have more meetings and less time for actual work. It means you're rich. Like actually rich. Like buy a boat rich. He paused. Are you going to buy a boat? I'm going to buy better coffee for the break room. See? This is why you deserve success. You're thinking about the little people. Peterson, predictably, was less enthusiastic. He'd been reassigned to a special projects role that everyone knew was corporate speak for graceful exit. He spent the morning cleaning out his office with the rigid dignity of a deposed monarch. Congratulations, he said stiffly when I passed his office. I hope you're prepared for what comes next, which is the knives. They're already being sharpened. He closed a box of personal items with more force than necessary. You think you've won something, but you've just painted a target on your back. Maybe, but I'd rather be a target than invisible. We'll see how you feel about that in 6 months. After he left, I stood in his former office. Now Manan tried to process the magnitude of the change. Corner office, city view, enough space for a proper conference table. The physical manifestation of power and success. My phone buzzed. Text from Clara. Drinks tonight. I need to hear everything. Another from an unknown number. Saw the news. Proud of you. Dad and one from Isabella. Emergency board meeting moved. 2, tomorrow. Hope you're ready for the fight of your life. I looked out at the city, at all those people fighting their own battles for recognition and respect. 6 months ago, I'd been one of them, invisible, overlooked, accepting scraps. Now I was about to walk into a boardroom full of powerful people who saw me as a threat to their comfortable status quo. The old me would have been terrified. The new me felt something different entirely. I felt ready. The boardroom felt like a gladiatorial arena disguised as executive furniture. 23 men and women in $1,000 suits. representing enough capital to buy small countries, all staring at me like I was an interesting specimen under a microscope. I'd been in corporate meetings before, but nothing like this where every word carried the weight of millions, and every pause could mean the difference between empire and exile. Mr. Zhao. Board Chairman Harrison Webb leaned forward, his silver hair and steely eyes radiating old money authority. Help us understand how a systems engineer with 3 years' experience suddenly merits a VP position and equity stake. I'd prepared for this question, war-gamed it with Isabella over coffee and late-night strategy sessions. But sitting here, feeling the collective skepticism pressing down like atmospheric pressure, the rehearsed answers felt hollow. Because the systems you've been using for the past decade are failing, I said, instead. An incremental change isn't enough anymore. Failing how? This from Margaret Chun, the same woman who'd witnessed Julian's meltdown at the gala. At least I had one potential ally in the room. I stood and walked to the presentation screen, pulling up the quarterly efficiency reports I'd spent weeks preparing. Revenue down 8% year-over-year. Employee satisfaction at a 5-year low. Operational costs increasing while productivity stagnates. You're not just falling behind competitors, you're actively moving backward. Market conditions, someone started. Market conditions are the same for everyone. The difference is adaptation. I clicked to the next slide. My department has increased efficiency by 30% in 3 months, not through layoffs or budget cuts, but by eliminating redundancy and streamlining processes that should have been updated years ago. Impressive numbers, Webb conceded, but that's a far cry from justifying an executive position, is it? Because I'm not just talking about my department anymore. I clicked to the comprehensive company analysis Isabella and I had developed in secret. I'm talking about applying these principles company-wide. Restructuring operations, modernizing workflows, eliminating the bureaucratic bottlenecks that are strangling innovation. The room went quiet. These weren't the modest improvements they'd expected. This was a complete overhaul of how the company functioned. The cost another board member began would be recouped within 18 months. Conservatively, Della spoke for the first time since introducing me. I've run the numbers. Ethan's projections are not only feasible, they're necessary for survival. Ms. Yuan, Webb's tone carried a warning. Surely you can see how this appears. A rapid promotion for someone with whom you've been publicly associated. The temperature in the room dropped perceptibly. This was the moment Isabella had warned me about, where corporate politics revealed its ugliest face. Mr. Webb, Isabella's voice could have frosted windows. Are you suggesting that my professional judgment is compromised by personal feelings? I'm suggesting that perception matters. It's the optics of this promotion. The optics of refusing to promote qualified candidates because of gender-based assumptions about professional relationships, Margaret Chen interjected smoothly. Because that's what this sounds like. I don't think that's what Harrison meant. Someone tried to mediate. Actually, I said, cutting through the diplomatic dancing, let's address this directly. You want to know if Isabella and I are sleeping together? The collective intake of breath was audible. Board meetings didn't typically feature such blunt, personal discussions. The answer is no. We're not romantic partners. We're business partners. The difference is that one involves compromised judgment and emotional decision-making, while the other involves mutual respect and shared vision. I looked directly at Webb. If you can't tell the difference, that explains a lot about this company's recent performance. Mr. Zhao, Webb's face was reddening. I'm not finished. I turned to address the entire room. You called this meeting because you're concerned about my qualifications. But what you're really concerned about is change. You're comfortable with failure because it's familiar failure. You'd rather lose money predictably than make money in new ways. That's enough. Webb started to stand. Harrison, Isabella's voice stopped him mid-rise. Let him finish. What I'm offering isn't just efficiency improvements. It's cultural transformation. It's a chance to build something that doesn't just survive market changes, but drives them. I paused, letting the words settle. But if you're not interested in that level of ambition, then you're right, I'm not qualified for this position, because I refuse to manage decline. The silence that followed was deafening. 23 powerful people processing whether they'd just witnessed corporate suicide or the most effective boardroom presentation in recent memory. Motion to table pending further review, Webb said finally. Seconded. As the room emptied, Isabella and I found ourselves alone with the lingering tension and scattered papers of corporate warfare. Well, she said, gathering her files, that went about as expected. Did I just torpedo both our careers? Possibly. Or you just saved them? She smiled, the first genuine expression I'd seen from her all day. Either way, it was magnificent. Her house was a study in understated elegance, modern lines, expensive materials, everything perfectly arranged. And somehow completely impersonal. Drink, she asked, leading me to a living room that looked like it belonged in an architecture magazine. Something strong. She poured 2 glasses of whiskey that probably cost more than my old monthly salary and settled onto the sofa beside me. Not close enough to suggest intimacy, but close enough to indicate trust. Tell me about your previous engagement, said. She went very still. Excuse me? The reason you don't trust partnerships? The reason you've built all this? I gestured at the pristine, lonely perfection around us and kept everyone at arm's length. How do you... Because I recognize the architecture. Emotional and physical. It's what I would have built if I'd had the money and resources. For a long moment, she didn't respond. Then she drained half her whiskey in one swallow. Her voice was matter of fact, but I could hear the carefully controlled emotion underneath. Brilliant, charming, everything I thought I wanted in a partner. We were engaged for 8 months. What happened? He embezzled $3 million from my company to fund his own startup. Used my access codes, my trust, my love against me. She finished the whiskey. The worst part wasn't the money. It was realizing how thoroughly I'd been played. How easily I'd been manipulated by someone who saw me as a resource rather than a person. How long ago? 5 years? I built these walls brick by brick after that. Told myself I'd never be that vulnerable again. And now I'm sitting in my fortress, drinking expensive whiskey with a man who just committed professional suicide to defend my judgment. She looked at me directly. What does that tell you? That maybe the walls weren't as impenetrable as you thought? Maybe I'm repeating old mistakes. I set down my glass and turned to face her. Fully. Isabella. I'm not David Chen. I'm not Julian Feng. I'm not any of the men who saw you as a stepping stone to something else. How can you be sure? Because I don't need you to be successful. I want you as a partner because you make me better, not because you make me possible. Something shifted in her expression, a crack in the perfect composure she wore like armor. The board will probably reject the promotion. Probably. We could both lose everything we've built. We could. Are you afraid? I considered. The question seriously. Was I afraid? Of failure, of public humiliation, of starting over from nothing. The old me would have been terrified, but sitting here in this beautiful prison Isabella had built for herself, I realized something had fundamentally changed. I'm only afraid of not trying. She was quiet for a long time, studying my face like she was memorizing it. You know what I realized today, watching you tear apart the board's assumptions? What? That I've been so afraid of being used that I forgot what it felt like to be understood. The recognition that 2 people who'd learned to survive alone might be stronger together. So what happens now? And we prepare for whatever comes next. Together? Together. Outside, the city sprawled beneath us like a constellation of ambition and broken dreams. Tomorrow would bring consequences for the risks we'd taken, the bridges we'd burned, the partnerships we'd chosen to forge. But tonight, for the first time and longer than I could remember, I wasn't worried about the future. I was looking forward to it. The board's decision arrived via conference call at 8 a.m. sharp, delivered in Harrison Webb's clipped, corporate monotone. After careful deliberation, we've decided to approve Mr. Zhao's promotion on a provisional basis. 6-month probationary period, with full review of performance metrics and cultural integration. I was in Isabella's office when the call came through. Watching her face foretells as Webb continued his carefully worded concessions. Provisional approval means they're covering their asses, she said after hanging up. If you succeed spectacularly, they take credit for bold leadership. If you fail, they distance themselves from the decision. And if I succeed moderately? She stood and walked to her window, looking out at the city like a general surveying a battlefield. Which is why moderate success isn't an option. The next 3 months passed, and the kind of high-stakes corporate chess that would have given my younger self anxiety attacks. But the new version of Mitha, one who'd learned to find calm in chaos, thrived on it. The efficiency improvements weren't just numbers on a spreadsheet anymore. They translated into real changes. Employees who actually looked forward to coming. To work processes that made sense. A company culture that rewarded innovation over politics. Clara landed a major consulting contract with our newly efficient procurement department. And even the skeptical board members had to admit the numbers were impressive. You know what the craziest part is? Said during one of our weekly check-ins. People are actually happy here now. Like, genuinely excited about their projects. Revolutionary concept, right? Who knew that treating employees like intelligent adults would improve performance? He paused, studying my face. You look different lately, more. I don't. No, settled. He wasn't wrong. The constant tension I'd carried for years, the feeling of waiting for the other shoe to drop had gradually disappeared. Not because my life had become simpler, but because I'd finally stopped trying to control outcomes I couldn't influence. The merger announcement came on a Tuesday that felt like any other Tuesday until it didn't. Isabella and I had been working on the details for weeks, combining her resources with the startup I'd been developing in secret, creating something entirely new in the process. Yuan Industries and Zhao Innovations announcing strategic merger. The press release read, Co-CEOs Isabella Yuan and Ethan Zhao to lead combined operations focused on technological efficiency and cultural innovation. Co-CEOs, cool partners. The kind of arrangement that would have seemed impossible 6 months ago, when I was still the invisible systems engineer who let other people make all the important decisions. The media response is, interesting, Isabella said, scrolling through the early coverage on her tablet. Half of them are calling it the power move of the decade. The other half are writing think pieces about whether corporate partnerships can survive romantic speculation. Are we giving interviews? Just one. Margaret Chen is hosting a tech industry roundtable next week. Neutral territory, intelligent questions, no tabloid nonsense. And if they ask about us, about whether this is business or personal, we tell them the truth. That some partnerships transcend simple categories. I looked up from my own tablet where the comment sections were already exploding with theories. Congratulations and the inevitable trolling that accompanied any public success. You realize this makes us both targets for every conspiracy theorist and gossip columnist in the city. Worth it? I thought about the question seriously. It's the attention, the scrutiny, the constant speculation about our relationship and motivations. A year ago, the prospect would have terrified me. Now it felt like the price of admission to a life worth living. It's completely worth it. The company party happened almost by accident. Lucas had organized what he called a efficiency celebration for the department, which somehow expanded into a building-wide event when word got out about the free bar and catered food. By 7 p.m., the entire office was packed with employees, their families, and what seemed like half the city's tech community. This is insane, Clara said, appearing at my elbow with 2 drinks and an expression of bemused pride. 6 months ago, you could barely speak up in meetings. Now you're co-CEO of a major tech company and the subject of 3 different dating rumors. Only 3? I'm disappointed. Oh, there are more. Lucas has been keeping a running list. Apparently you're simultaneously dating Isabella, secretly married to her, and using her for corporate advancement while planning to steal her company. Busy schedule, right? When do you find time to actually run a business? She clinked, her glass against mine. Seriously, though, I'm proud of you. This is who you were always supposed to be. Across the room, I could see Isabella holding court with a group of investors, effortlessly charming them while somehow maintaining her ice queen reputation. She caught my eye and raised her glass in a subtle, salutor, private joke about Surviving another day in the public eye. Mr. Zhao, a voice behind me made me turn. Margaret Chen approached with a warm smile and what looked like a very expensive bottle of champagne. Congratulations on the merger. Though I have to say, I'm not entirely surprised. No. Anyone who watched you handle Harrison Webb could see you were destined for bigger things. She glanced toward Isabella. You two make an interesting team. Very complementary strengths. Thank you, though I suspect you didn't come over here just to offer congratulations. Her smile widened, perceptive. Actually, I wanted to give you some advice. The kind I wish someone had given me when I was starting out. Success is easier to achieve than it is to sustain. You've built something impressive, but now comes the harder part, keeping it without losing yourself in the process. She paused, looking around at the celebration surrounding us. Don't forget that the point of all this isn't the power or the recognition. It's the ability to do meaningful work with people you respect. And if I do forget, then you become another cautionary tale about brilliant people who confused achievement with fulfillment. She handed me the champagne, though somehow I don't think that's going to be a problem for you. After she left, I stood at the edge of the party, watching the scene unfold. Lucas was telling animated stories about our early efficiency meetings. To anyone who'd listen, Clara was networking with the kind of focused intensity that had made her such a successful consultant. Employees who'd looked miserable 6 months ago were laughing, celebrating, actually enjoying themselves. And in the center of it all, Isabella Yuan, brilliant, powerful. No longer quite so isolated, was building something that hadn't existed before we decided to trust each other. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Saw the news about the merger. You always were too smart for your own good. Leah, I stared at the message for a moment, then deleted it without responding. Some chapters didn't need epilogues. Penny for your thoughts? Isabella appeared beside me, having escaped her investor admirers. Just reflecting on how strange life can be. 6 months ago, I was invisible. Tonight, I'm co-CEO of a company that didn't exist this morning. Any regrets? I looked at her, my partner, my equal, my friend, who'd become something more than friend without ever crossing lines. That would complicate what we'd built together? None whatsoever. Good, because tomorrow, we start the real work, which is proving that everything we've accomplished so far was just the warm-up. 3 months into our merger, I found myself standing in the empty apartment where my marriage had died. The lease was finally up, and I'd come to collect the last of my belongings. It's mostly books and a few pieces of furniture that held more sentimental value than monetary worth. The place felt smaller than I remembered, drained of the emotional weight that had once made every room feel like a battlefield. Just empty spaces and afternoon sunlight, waiting for the next tenants to fill them with their own dreams and disappointments. I was packing the last box when I found it. A leather journal, wedged behind the bookshelf, filled with my handwriting from what felt like another lifetime. Plans for the future, sketches of inventions, business ideas I'd been too afraid to pursue. The dreams of a man who'd thought success meant making other people happy instead of making himself useful. Revolutionary inventory management system? Read one entry. Corporate culture assessment app. Employee satisfaction analytics platform. All ideas I'd eventually developed and integrated into the merger with Isabella. But seeing them here, written, in the hopeful scrawl of my younger self, I realized how long I'd been preparing for this moment without knowing it. My phone rang, Clara's name on the screen. Hey, I answered, still reading through the journal. What's up? Just wanted to check in. Lucas said you were doing the final apartment clean-out today. How's it going? Better than expected. It's weird, I thought this would be harder. The nostalgia factor. The closure factor. It turns out saying goodbye to who you used to be is easier when you like who you've become. Deep thoughts from the co-CEO. I'm proud of you. You know that? You've mentioned it a few times. I'm going to keep mentioning it until you stop looking surprised when people recognize your worth. Her voice softened. You've built something amazing, Ethan, and not just the company yourself. After we hung up, I sat on the floor of the empty living room and continued reading. Page after page of abandoned ambitions and half-formed concepts, all waiting for someone brave enough to turn them into reality. The man who'd written these entries had been a dreamer, trapped in a life too small for his imagination. It had taken losing everything for him to realize the trap was of his own making. My phone buzzed. Email notification. From Leah Lynn, consulting@gmail. Goodbye, Ethan. Goodbye, Ethan. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, and I don't blame you. I'm leaving the city next week, new job in Singapore, and I couldn't go without saying what I should have said months ago. I was wrong about everything. About what I wanted, about what mattered, about who you were and who I could become. I spent so long looking for something better that I never appreciated what I already had. Watching you succeed these past few months has been painful and inspiring in equal measure. Painful because I know I threw away something real. It's inspiring because seeing you happy reminds me that maybe I can figure out how to be happy too. Even if it takes me longer to learn. I'm not asking for forgiveness or second chances or any of the things I probably don't deserve. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I lost, and I'm genuinely glad you found what you needed. Take care of yourself. And take care of Isabella. She's lucky to have found someone who sees her as more than her success. With respect and regret, Leah, I read the email twice, then closed it without responding. Not from anger or spite, but because there was nothing left to say. Leah had finally learned the lesson. It had taken me 11 months of misery to understand that some mistakes can't be fixed, only learned from. I drove from the apartment to Isabella's house, arriving just as the sun was setting over the city skyline. She was in her study, surrounded by financial reports and strategic projections, still wearing the focused intensity that had first caught my attention in that conference room months ago. "How did it go?" she asked without looking up from her work. Strange, like visiting a museum of my former life. "Find anything interesting?" I set the journal on her desk. "Old dreams. Turns out I've been planning our company for years without realizing it." She picked up the journal, scanning a few pages with the quick comprehension that made her such an effective CEO. "These are good ideas. Some of them are ideas we're implementing now." No. It's like I was preparing for a life I didn't know I wanted. Or maybe you always knew what you wanted, but you weren't ready to want it. She closed the journal and looked at me directly. The Ethan who wrote these entries couldn't have built what we've built. He was too afraid of failure to risk real success. And now you're someone who tells board chairmen they're comfortable with failure. Someone who commits professional suicide to defend his partner's judgment. Someone who walks away from guaranteed safety to pursue uncertain greatness. I settled into the chair across from her desk, noting how natural this felt, the two of us. Planning and scheming and building something neither of us could have created alone. "Leah sent me an email today," I said. "Final goodbye before moving to Singapore. How did that feel?" Like receiving news about someone I used to know. Not painful, not satisfying, just distant. Good, distance is healthy, is it? Sometimes I wonder if I've become too detached, too willing to walk away from things. Isabella leaned back in her chair, studying me with the analytical intensity she usually reserved for business problems. "Do you know why I trusted you? My devastating charm and modest demeanor? Because you're the first person I've met who doesn't need me. You want to work with me? You respect me? You enjoy my company? But you don't need me to complete yourself." She paused. "And us? What are we exactly?" It was a question we'd been dancing around for months. Business partners, certainly. Friends, definitely. Something more than friends, but less than lovers. A category that didn't have an easy label. "We're whatever we choose to be," she said finally. "Partners who respect each other enough not to complicate what works with expectations about what it should become." Is that enough? For now, it's everything. Outside, the city lights were beginning to twinkle like earthbound stars. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, board meetings, strategic decisions. The endless complexity of building something meaningful in a world that often rewarded mediocrity. But tonight, sitting in this study, with this remarkable womanhood, chosen to trust me, I felt something I'd never experienced before. Complete satisfaction with exactly where I was. The old Ethan had always been reaching for something just out of grasp, a better job, a stronger marriage, recognition from people whose opinions didn't matter. The new version had learned to find contentment in the present while still working toward the future. "One more question," I said. "Shoot. Are you happy? Really happy?" She considered the question with the same seriousness she brought to everything else. "I'm building something meaningful with someone I respect. I wake up excited about the work we're doing. I've stopped checking over my shoulder for betrayal every 5 minutes." She smiled. "Oh, yeah, I think I'm happy." "Good, because tomorrow we're announcing the mental health initiative. Nervous, excited. The first time in my life, I'm excited about everything that's coming next." The launch event for our mental health initiative drew a crowd that spilled beyond the convention center's capacity. Tech leaders, investors, journalists, and hundreds of employees who'd helped build something that mattered. Standing at the podium, looking out at faces illuminated by anticipation and possibility, I felt the weight of how far I'd traveled from that morning when I'd woken up to my second chance. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice carrying across the hushed auditorium. 18 months ago, I was a man who'd forgotten how to value himself. Today, we're launching a platform designed to help others remember their worth. The applause was thunderous, but I barely heard it. In the front row, Isabella sat with the quiet satisfaction of someone watching carefully laid plans come to fruition. Clara beamed with proud tears in her eyes. Lucas Liv tweeted with his usual enthusiasm, probably coining hashtags that would trend within the hour. "This isn't just about technology," I continued. "It's about creating spaces where people can heal, grow, and discover who they're meant to become. It's about second chances for individuals, for companies, for the way we think about success itself." A reporter raised her hand. "Mr. Zhao, there's been considerable speculation about your relationship with Ms. Yuan. Can you comment on whether this partnership is romantic or purely professional?" The question I'd been anticipating for months. I glanced at Isabella, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "That's the wrong question," I said, surprising the room. "The right question is whether we've built something that makes the world better, whether we've created value beyond ourselves, whether we've proven that respect and trust can be more powerful than traditional relationship categories. You're not dating, we're partners, in every sense that matters." After the formal presentation, Isabella and I found ourselves on the venue's balcony, looking out at the city that had witnessed our transformation. The night air carried the sound of celebration from inside colleagues and friends, toasting not just our success, but the possibility that work could be meaningful, and partnerships could transcend simple definitions. "Any regrets?" she asked, echoing our conversation from months ago. "About which part?" "All of it. The risks we took, the bridges we burned, the conventional path we abandoned. I thought about the man I'd been invisible, dependent, afraid of his own shadow. Then I considered who we'd become: equals, innovators, people who'd learned that the greatest risk was not taking any risks at all." "None," I said. "Not one." "Good, because tomorrow we start the next phase, which is whatever we choose it to be." Behind us, the celebration continued. Ahead of us, the city sprawled like a map of infinite possibility. Between us, something rare and valuable had taken root: a partnership built on mutual respect, shared vision, and the understanding that the best relationships are the ones that make both people stronger. I wasn't the same man who'd woken up with a second chance a year and a half ago. I was someone better, someone who'd learned to choose himself without abandoning others, who discovered that true power came not from control, but from the courage to build something meaningful. As we walked back inside, Isabella's hand briefly touched my arm. Not romantic. It's not possessive. Just the simple acknowledgement between equals who'd found something worth protecting. The future stretched ahead of us, uncertain and full of promise. But for the first time in my life, uncertainty felt like an adventure rather than a threat. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.